be reviewing figurative language. Figurative language is something that authors use to help them describe things in their text, to give you a more complete idea of what they're describing and help you relate it to things you might already know. It helps the authors establish a voice in the story. It helps you get a tone, an idea of the tone that they're trying to use, if it's happy, if it's scary. And it's just another interesting way to describe objects and actions in a story. There are 6 types of figurative language that we're going to be looking at today. There are more than 6 types in all, but we are going to be reviewing the 6 types we have covered so far. Those are sensory language, which is also called imagery. And you can remember that imagery is like things that you get an image of in your mind, a picture of. And seeing things and making a picture is one of your 5 senses. Metaphors and similes are closely related, and we're going to look at both of those. Personification, idioms, and onomatopoeia. So metaphors are a comparison of 2 things by saying one thing is another thing, like the sun is a bright gem in the sky. Whereas a simile is comparing 2 things using like or as. So her eyes are as green as emeralds. A metaphor would be saying her eyes are emeralds, and a simile says her eyes are as green as emeralds. Personification gives human qualities or characteristics to an animal or an object. The little bird sang a sweet song. You can always think of any type of cartoon that has an object that normally would not act like a person acting like a person. Imagery is sensory language. It's language that appeals to our 5 senses. My shoes crunched across the new frosting of snow in my yard. The crunching gives you an idea of the sound the shoes are making. Idioms are expressions or sayings that mean something different from the real meaning of the individual words. So break a leg, if you say it in the context of, hey, good luck at your play tonight, go break a leg, you're telling somebody good luck. It doesn't mean that you actually want them to break a leg. Lastly, onomatopoeias are one of the easiest to remember, but not the easiest to spell. It's a word that imitates the sound that it describes, like crack, ring, boom, pop. So first we're going to look a little more in depth at sensory language. It describes things using the 5 senses. Sight, so what things look like. Sound, what you hear. Touch, how things feel. Smell, how things smell. And taste, how things are tasting when you eat them. So you might be thinking that you could definitely use a metaphor or a simile as sensory language, and that is true. So sensory language can totally overlap with other things. You could absolutely use an onomatopoeia to describe the sound of something, and that would be both sensory language and onomatopoeia. So for sight, it's going to describe the way something looks. Another word for that is how it appears, what you see. It's going to describe colors and size of things. For sound, you're going to hear words like that describe the level of sound, how loud or how quiet, or what kinds of sounds. Like a siren would blare. You might whisper quietly, or sing a song, or a trumpeting sound. For touch, things might be rough, furry, soft, wet, fluffy, cold, or hot. Smells, you need to remember some other words for smell, such as aroma, scent, odor, stink, stench, and waft. Those words all describe the act of smelling something. Taste, that's going to just describe how things taste. It could be a specific flavor like chocolatey or cinnamony, but it could also be sweet, spicy, bitter, sour, tangy, salty, things like that. Now you try. What sense does this appeal to? The blaring siren echoed through the streets. You try this one. What sense does this appeal to? The sweet crunch of the honey roasted almonds satisfied my hunger. Good, try this one. What sense does this appeal to? The jagged gray mountain towered over the snowy village. Good, try this one. What sense does this appeal to? I was always calmed by the warmth of the fuzzy blanket. How about this one? The moment I entered the movie theater, the aroma of salty buttered popcorn filled my senses. That one's a little tricky. All right, let's look at similes now. A simile compares two things using the word like or as. He is as blank as a blank. He is as tall as a mountain. He is as fast as a speeding bullet. He is as smart as a rocket scientist. Or it can use the word like. She is like a rose. She is like a blooming flower. Similes help us relate things the author is describing to things that we might already know. The forest was as dark as a moonless night. So we know how dark it is when there's no moon or there's a new moon and we don't have the light of the moon lighting up the sky. And so we can picture a forest being that dark. It's just pitch black where you can't see anything in front of you. They also let us know how extreme a description is. The runner was as fast as a cheetah. So that runner is not a little bit fast. That runner is extremely fast. She was as slow as a snail. Well, someone who's as slow as a snail is very slow. They're not lagging just a little bit behind. They're extremely slow. Now, on the other hand, we need to distinguish similes from metaphors. Metaphors do not use like or as. Metaphors compare two things by saying one thing is another thing. There's not only one form of is, though. It could be is, are, was, or were. Is, are, was, or were. The field is a bouquet of colorful flowers. The race was so mismatched, he was a cheetah racing against a herd of turtles. So that is saying he is the cheetah or was the cheetah, and the other racers were so much slower than he was, they were a herd of turtles. She was a shining light of hope in the dark times. Now you try. We're going to practice distinguishing between a simile and a metaphor. Tell me, is this a simile or a metaphor? The blue jay was as blue as the ocean. How about this? Is this a simile or a metaphor? The basketball player was a tall tree towering over the other people. Is this a simile or a metaphor? I should not have jumped in the pool in December. It was as cold as ice. Is this a simile or a metaphor? She was a cute little cupcake. Now let's look at personification. Personification is when an object or non-moving thing does things like a living person. Examples, easy ones, are SpongeBob and Dora's backpack. SpongeBob is a sponge, but he talks and moves around and has friends, just like a person would. Dora's backpack is a backpack, which is not even a living thing, it's an object, but it talks and sings and helps Dora on her adventures. So those characters in their entirety are personified. Now, sometimes we have personification that's just a single line of text, like the leaves were dancing in the wind. Well, the leaves aren't characters. They're not talking and singing or going on an adventure. It's just describing how the leaves are moving. But leaves don't dance, people dance. So the leaves are being personified. They are dancing in the wind. Flowers reaching for the sky. Maybe the flowers, like the sunflowers, are growing super tall. The flowers can't actually put their arms up and reach. A human can put their arms up and reach. So the flowers reaching for the sky as they grow toward the sun, that's personification. Now let's look at idioms. Idioms are sayings. They're phrases that people say that don't mean what the words actually mean. So we're not telling you the meaning that the words by themselves mean. The idioms actually are a whole different meaning when they're said together. Oftentimes, if we read an idiom that we are not familiar with, that we have not heard before, you're going to raise your hand and say, huh? Miss McQueen, what's this mean? That's weird. Well, it's probably an idiom. Here's some examples. These are pretty common, and you've probably heard of them. Go break a leg, spill the beans, piece of cake, cutting edge, let the cat out of the bag, or you're on thin ice. We all know go break a leg means good luck. If you spill the beans, you've told a secret. A piece of cake means it's easy. Cutting edge means it's brand new technology. If you let the cat out of the bag, you've also told a secret. And if you're on thin ice, you're in trouble. Now let's look at onomatopoeias. I think these are the easiest, even though it's such a crazy word. They are sound words, and they make similar sounds to the noise that they describe. They help the reader get a more complete sensory experience, so they can add to the sound description, letting the reader know what the author is hearing in the story. Examples are any kind of animal sounds, so oink and meow. Other sounds like honks, bangs, squeaks like a squeaking door or a squeaking mouse, and comic book words like boom and pow. Those are all onomatopoeias. Onomatopoeias can also be strange sound words like it just might make this try to be making the sound of air or wind. And these instances where an author uses unique spelling to try to replicate a sound, those are also onomatopoeias. So we are going to try a little quiz at the end here to see how you are understanding this. I'm going to give you a sentence and you are going to tell me what type of figurative language this is. So what type of figurative language is this? Santa's belly shook like a bowl full of jelly. What type of figurative language is this? The aroma of gingerbread and cocoa wafted through Santa's workshop. What type of figurative language is this? The elf was a toy machine, cranking out miniature trains and teddy bears. What type of figurative language is this? Womp, womp, phew. The toy machine let out a big puff of smoke and came to a stop. What type of figurative language is this? While all the other elves worked tirelessly, Sleepy sat on the bench like a bump on a log. What type of figurative language is this? The brightly wrapped presents climbed to the top of the tree. What type of figurative language is this? Snowflakes danced through the air, making the North Pole look even more magical. What type of figurative language is this? The night after Christmas, Santa was so tired, he laid down like a bear ready to hibernate. What type of figurative language is this? With a jingle jangle of sleigh bells, the reindeer trotted up to the workshop. Thank you for reviewing figurative language with me.